Good morning, everyone. We have a very precious guest again today. She's joining us from Australia, Melbourne, which is very far from us and 7 hours ahead from us. And I would like to thank her for accepting our invitation to be here with us today, for hosting. It is my pleasure for hosting her. Good morning, Sanas. We can see you now.
Good morning.
Thank you again for joining us today. Before giving the floor to you, I would like to read your short biography to the students for giving them brief information about you. She will be talking about on and off screen on filmmaking in Afghanistan, writing and the link between. Dr. Sanas Futuhi holds a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Philosophy from the University of Hong Kong, as well as a PhD in English Literature. The thesis of her PhD at the University of New South Wales was published as The Literature of the Iranian Diaspora, Meaning and Identity since the Islamic Revolution in 2015, and has been an important resource in diasporic Iranian literary studies. As a creative writer, Sanas has been published in anthologies and journals across Australia and Asia. In 2020, she published her memoir, Love, Marriage in Kabul, which narrates her journey of filmmaking in Afghanistan as a young woman. Sanas is also the co-producer of two documentary films, Hidden Generation, a short documentary examining the reasons for the increase of women's self-burning as a form of suicide in Afghanistan, and Love, Marriage in Kabul, a multi-award feature documentary following a young couple as they try to get married against all odds. Sanas is one of the founding members of Persian Film Festival in Australia and is the former director of Asia Pacific Writers and Translators, a literary networking organization that brings together people from the creative writing and publishing industries. Currently, she is living in Melbourne with her son and partner and is on a short hiatus and mindering in motherhood and reflecting on life, while projects are brewing and waiting to surface soon. Now I'm giving the floor to you, and thank you again for joining us, being with us today. We are very pleasured for hosting you. Yes.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be with you guys. I know it's really early morning for you guys, so thanks for you guys for being there to hear what I've got to say. So basically, what I would like to talk to you guys about today, and excuse me, I've lost my voice recently, so it's a bit husky, so bear with me. So what I'd like to talk to today is about the process of making a films in Afghanistan, and how that process also translated into me writing a book about the experience. And I think that fits in with the theme of the lectures, the series of lectures that you guys have at the university there. So basically, to begin with, as Huri explained and gave you a little bit of a background, I come from a filmmaking background. So basically, can you still hear me? Yeah, okay. So basically what happened was that in 2006, my partner and we decided to go to Afghanistan. And the reason that we decided to go to Afghanistan was that at that time, my father, who was a banker, he's now retired, he was working in Kabul, in Afghanistan. And at that time, the Taliban had just recently left. So it had only been a few years that the Taliban had left. And we decided that we're going to go and visit him to see what the country is like. I'd always dreamt of going and visiting Afghanistan, and I thought this was a great opportunity. So when we got there, we decided that this country has so many stories that no one has really been able to express, because they had been living under the rule of the Taliban for a while, and access to the country had been very limited. And so initially we decided that we're going to go back and make a film. So what we did was we looked at various topics, various issues that were prevalent at the time. We had a list of many, many different topics. And one of the topics that came coming up was women's self-burning as a form of suicide. So what this means is that after the Taliban left in the early 2000s, there was a sudden increase in women's self-burning as a form of suicide. What that meant is that suddenly women started to burn themselves as a form of suicide. And it really was a mystery why so many people, so many women and young women were doing this. So we set out to make a film about this, but we had no budget. We were students at that time. My partner then, he was still an undergraduate student. I just started my PhD, and we had zero funding. And we basically borrowed equipment from his university. We set out to go to Afghanistan, and we did what you call a guerrilla style filmmaking. So we basically took our camera, just me and him, just two people, and we set out to speak to people in the hospitals, women, doctors, social workers, and various people who come across women who had burned themselves. So we're very deeply interested in understanding the reason and capturing that reason. And we did that. We did that despite all odds. We were there for about 10 days. We went to the burn units. We went to the hospitals. We saw some really horrible and gruesome things. And we turned that into a short film that we called Hidden Generation. And we came back to Australia when we made it, and it became part of his honors undergraduate degree coursework program. Then what happened was that people couldn't be with this film because it was so confronting and so raw. What I mean is that, you know, we'd gone in, we spoken to these women, we had captured the rawness of it. And although the film was screened several places, people didn't want to see it. They couldn't be with it. They're like, this is too confronting. And so what we did is that we decided that this didn't fulfill on its intention. So we decided that we need to make another film. And we set out to do this. And that process itself was a very, very lengthy process. So we set out the idea of making a film in 2007. And then by the time we actually landed in Afghanistan to make the second film was 2009. And in between that, we just kept looking for ideas, looking for people who had links with Afghanistan. One of the original ideas was to follow one of the women who had burned themselves and survived, and to follow their story. But because this act of suicide or attempted suicide is such a horrible thing, so people don't want to really talk about it, and so we couldn't actually find anyone to volunteer to make that film. So eventually what happened is that I came across a woman called Mahbouba Ravi, and Mahbouba is a woman who runs schools, charities, care houses for thousands and thousands of women across Kabul and Afghanistan. And she said that she has so many ideas, more ideas than I could ever comprehend or ever imagine for making a film. And she said that she was going back to Afghanistan in 2009, and she was trying to make marriage happen between one of the very first boys that her organization had saved from Pakistan. He was an Afghani boy living in Pakistan, and a girl living across the street from one of the orphanages that she was managing. And so, again, we decided that we're going to set out to Afghanistan. This time, again, we had no funding, just the two of us, with some borrowed money, borrowed equipment. No idea how this thing is going to pan out. We didn't have a script. It was just, let's go and do this, just the two of us again, right? So we spent a month in Afghanistan, living at the orphanage, living and taking in the stories and capturing these stories and what was going on. And how things panned out, like we could not have written this better. If we were to write it as if we were to write it as a script, we couldn't have written how everything plotted out and panned out. It turned out there was a lot of challenges. There was a lot of unexpected moments. It was a very emotional journey. And we had captured, I don't know, like hundreds of hours of footage. So with great difficulty, we got back to Australia because we had to go through Iran. We got back to Australia and we had all this footage. Now we had to do something about it. It's very different to have footage and to have a film, right? So at that time, both of us were still students. We didn't have jobs. We didn't have income. We had no support. So we ended up really trying hard to be working and then trying to finish our studies and also trying to apply for funding, to find a producer. And eventually what happened was that we found one of my then partner's teachers, documentary teachers. She came on board as a producer, and that's when things started moving. And then we found a good editor, and then we applied for some funding from the Australian government, which helped us with the post-production of the film. And eventually, so remember, we shot this in 2009, and eventually the film was released in 2015 at the Sydney Film Festival. So it took us that long to eventuate footage into film. And then what happened was when the film came out, it was very different to the previous film that we made, because it actually was very touching, very heartwarming. And it just went really crazy. We weren't expecting it. So it won numerous awards. It won the Sydney Film Festival's Audience Choice Award. Went on to win an Australian Directors Guild Award. It was shortlisted for a Walkley, which is like a Pulitzer in Australia. So it did really well. The film did really, really well. And it's still actually really active because in Australia, it's on one of the local platforms. If you were in Australia, you could log on and actually watch it. It was screened on television. So it did really, really amazing. Before I go on and talk about the rest of this, I would like to actually show you guys the trailer for the film. So if you guys could put on the first trailer, please.
اصلا از دروازه بیرون شدن نمیگذارم. یک هفته شده نمیگذاره به مکتب برم. اگر از درسش بانه، از درس مکتب بانه، باز هم هیچ چیز شد دیگه. نوشته سلام، نوشته I love you. وقتی مکتب بود در تابستان، خیلی وقت بعد، یک ماه بعد از هیچ کدام من احوال نداشتیم. بعد نوشته کرده بود به من.
Abdel was one of the first children that I rescued. He grew up such a good young man.
اگر مادرم به اینجا باشد شاید خوب کنم.
نفس مبارک. سلام. خسرت مرا کشت.
چرا؟
خسرت گفت که 7 لک افغانی مرا بده و یا شرط به که دختر برای بچیم پیدا کنی شرط بس. تو ما برای بچه پیسه پیدا کنی خودت فکر کنی.
نه شما خودتان قضاوت کنین امر دختر تیستر خانه‌دار کردن دختر.
هر لحظه فکر میکنم. نمیدونم چی کار بکنم.
دوره ندیدی ایده او خانه بود.
نه
ای گلی گلهایم، ای نور چشمانم، در قلبم سرچشمه میزند. نام تو، یادی تو، تصویری تو، حرفها و با نفسهای تو زنده هستم.
So, so after the film came out, I felt like there was something that was missing for me, because remember that I come from a writing background. My actual background is writing and literature, and so I had started writing about this experience of going to Afghanistan and what I'd experienced with the women. And I felt like there's so much that wasn't expressed in the film, because a film is only snippet. It's only a short moment captured in time. But there's so much that has gone behind the making of the film. And also what I felt was needed to be said was the story, several things, right? First was the story of the women and the children who didn't make it to the film, because there was so many women and children that we interviewed, that we had spoken to, whose stories were never going to air. No one was going to know about it. So especially for the first film, which is about women self-burning, we had only like 10 minutes to express what we had experienced. And so there wasn't enough space. So I felt like I had been there, I had witnessed, I had looked into the eyes of some of these women who died the next day because they burned themselves. And I had a duty to then write and express that. So I started writing about that. And another thing that kept coming up for me was my experience as a woman. I celebrated my 25th birthday the first time we gone to Kabul. So I was 25 years old. I was going around in hospitals, witnessing all these women who burned themselves, some of them as young as me or even younger. So there was a lot in me that also needed to be expressed about what I had experienced, the validation, the being witnessed in that process. And what else was also missing in the film was the actual process of making of the film, because you look at a film and oftentimes people don't even think twice, unless you're a filmmaker, you come from that background, you don't even think twice about what has actually taken for this film's material, like the emotional journey, the physical journey, the financial journey, especially in a country like Afghanistan, where, we were going into a war zone. Literally, there was like bombs were going off. People were bombing themselves close to us. So it was a really tough and dangerous journey that we'd gone on. And I just kept realizing how much of that had not been expressed and needed to be expressed. So I set out to write the book. And I set out to write the book. Well, I had started writing the book as soon as we come back first time in Afghanistan, which is which is the year 2006, and I kept writing it, rewriting it, editing it. But that journey in itself was a massive journey for me, because what happened was that, so I'd written about the women's self-burning bits and everything that went with it. I was a different person to when I came back and I wrote about the making of the second film. And so they read like two different books, two different people. They didn't even sound alike. So I had to edit it, re-edit it, keep working on it. I can easily say I had at least 10 drafts of this big manuscript. And I kept sending it to writers, to publishing houses. I sent it to agents. It just kept getting rejected and rejected and rejected. And it was a really painful process for anyone out there who's doing projects. And when you're writing, when you want your project to get out there and it just doesn't happen, it's really frustrating, as you can imagine. So eventually what happened was that there was a prize. I kept applying for prizes, anything I could get my hands on, I would apply. And so eventually what happened was I applied for a prize called the Peter Blasey Award, which is about memoir and memoir writing. And coincidentally, the person who was actually running this was a man who'd gone to Afghanistan, and he'd experienced what Afghanistan was like. And they loved the manuscript, and my manuscript, my unpublished manuscript, won the prize. And when it did win the prize, doors just opened, and the book then eventuated. But that wasn't the end of the story, because the process of the writing of it and the re-editing of it. Remember, I said that it actually read like two different books, right? And so I had to then go back and re-edit it, give it to my publisher, and then an editor. And the editor, what she did is she basically took the book, she pulled it apart, and she put it back together. So when she sent me back the manuscript, after she edited it, I couldn't look at it for like 3 weeks. I was like, this is not my work. I cannot be with this, because you've taken my book, you pulled it apart, and you put it back together. And then I had all sorts of ethical questions. Is it even my work? You know, if you've edited this so much, is it even my work? Does it read better? So anyway, it took me a very long time, couple of weeks, to sit with it, read it, re-examine it, and actually realize that this version that my editor had proposed was a better version, because it weaved the stories in together really well. And eventually the book was published. But the problem was the book came out right in the midst of the Melbourne lockdowns, and we had some of the hardest lockdowns in the world. So I had my book launch online after having had a baby, and it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. So it was a very a disappointing process, you know, to say the least, to have the book come out at that time when there's so much going on in the world, and how do you even deal with it? So anyway, so the short story is that the book is actually out now. The film is out now, and actually, maybe you want to, if you can have a look at the book trailer now, you can have an idea of what the book is about.
In 2006, against everyone's advice, I traveled to war-torn Afghanistan with Amin Palangi. I was in my 20s and determined to confront my own fears, to provide an insight into the hidden world of Afghanistan's widows and orphans. Love Marriage in Kabul, MMR, is the behind-the-scenes account of the seemingly impossible project to make a documentary film.
So the book came out, and as you guys know, a couple of years ago, unfortunately, the Taliban, after the Americans and the foreign troops pulled out, the Taliban came back to Afghanistan. And what happened then is that life just went back into that horribleness that existed. And the people who were in our film, Fatima and Abdel Fattah, although they were part of Mahbouba's Promise organization, and Mahbouba's Promise managed to escape about 200 people. So they managed to bring out 200 orphans and children from Afghanistan, and we housed them in Australia. For various reasons, Abdel Fattah and Fatima, who were in our film, who now have 4 children, one of them under 1, still stuck in Afghanistan, and they don't have it. They can't find a job. They got 3 daughters. None of them can now go to school. Fatima cannot work. She's a midwife, or she has been trained as a midwife. She can't go to work because women are not allowed to work. And so last year they reached out to me. They said, we're stuck in this country. We need help to get out. We haven't been able to get out. For me, how it lived was that, well, I don't have any resources. You know, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a human rights activist. I don't have any means to help you guys get out of the country. But part of me felt like I still owed something, you know. These people had played such an instrumental role in the way our careers had turned out, in the way that the trajectory of our life had turned out. So I felt like I really owed it to them to give it a good crack, to see if I could actually help bring these people here. And so despite not knowing any way of how I'm going to do this, I said, all right, okay, let's give it a try. Let's see what we can do to bring you guys over. And so as soon as I made that commitment, paths started to open, and I came into contact with people who've been helping Mahbouba's Promise bring people over. And then, you know, I started talking to various people, and the process seemed real. And so currently at the moment, what we've done is I've put in an application for these people, to a humanitarian visa application for them to eventually come to Australia. So we're in the midst of that process of their visa application, which is very vigorous. It's going to take months and months, and they have to escape Afghanistan, which means that, you know, they need to go to a third country because the visa will not be processed in Afghanistan. So they need to go to either Iran or Pakistan. And I'm just about to start a fundraising campaign for them with the hope of getting them out of the country so that we can get them here. And also I've just started talking to some people, so hopefully we're also going to document this process on film, and then have another film about their journey as they come out to Australia. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about this process. I don't know how if there's any questions, or if it's been helpful, inspirational.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, your journey. Actually, it is very inspiring. And yes, do you have any question?
Hello.
Hi.
I would love to ask a question about the difficulties or the limitations that came along the way when you were filming these documentaries or interviewing these people while in the process of shooting the documentaries. Because as you mentioned, it wasn't that safe of a place to be, even though Taliban wasn't there anymore around the time that you went. So I wanted to get a more in-depth view about how things were going, and like some details about how yeah, it all came to be.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so there was a lot of limitations. Number one was that first of all, when we went, we didn't have security. Both times we didn't have security, and usually when film crew go, they have a lot of security because it's very unstable, so you want to be secure. But then the first time we went, we went because my dad was there, so we went with his driver. His driver was a kind of our bodyguard, and they wouldn't want to let us out of sight because they were afraid they were going to get kidnapped, because my dad was a banker, so they thought, you know, they were really, really protective of us the first time. The second time that we went, when we made Love, Marriage and Couple, again, we didn't have security, but what we didn't know was that Mahbouba, the woman who took us, she had put in so many different kinds of invisible security. Like, we didn't know that there were guys sleeping outside our bedroom protecting us. We didn't know that when we went to places, she would lock the door from the inside. So that's one aspect of it, like the security aspect of it. And the second aspect of it was the fact that Afghanistan is a very insular country. By insular, I mean there's a lot of division between public and private. And going as a team of man and woman, a team that has two people, was very, very helpful in us being able to get in under the skin of the culture in the society, because like Afghan families do not let strange men into their house. They wouldn't even entertain the idea, let alone them having a camera, right? Or even in the women's hospitals, there was no way if he had gone by himself to make a film that he would have ever been able to make the film with the depth that he had if I hadn't gone as a woman. Just my presence as a woman allowed me entrance into the spaces of female spaces. It allowed for people to open up to me, other women to open up to me. And then going as because we were a couple then, going as a couple, so it was like we were a family, so people trusted us, so we had that degree of trust for people to invite us into their homes as part of their family, so that, you know, we had so much more access. And a second thing was a limitation was equipment. You know, the first time that we went, we took limited equipment, and back then in the early 2000s, we had those hard disks that had the spinning parts. And this was one of the most devastating experiences of my life, was that we took a couple of hard drives, and I used to take lots of photos. So I had thousands of photos that I later exhibited and did different things with. And because we were limited in the space and in, I don't know how we work, I don't know, we didn't think through the process properly. So we hadn't taken enough backup. In the process, one of the hard disks got damaged. So I lost about 2,500 photos. I had over 3,000 photos. I lost about 2,500 photos. Never, ever recovered. So that was one of the biggest, challenges of just emotionally dealing with the fact that, oh, I lost those photos and they'll never be recovered. So yeah, many, many challenges, and these are some of them.
Okay. Now Nuran Özey is watching us, and she has a comment and message for you. So let me read it. Dear Sanaz, your journey affected me a lot. Thanks a lot for your presentation, and I would like to watch your full documentary if it is possible. And me too, actually. This is my question as well. Can we watch your documentary, and if it is possible, how?
I think you can watch it online, because I think it's only Australia based. But what I can do, if you guys want to have a screening or something, what I can do is I can send you the film via a link, and then with a private link, and you guys can have access to it and watch it.
Thank you so much. Who else? Any question? No question. Okay, I'm gonna ask a question then. What are your suggestions to the students? It was a very difficult journey for you, and not to give up, especially during this kind of journeys, difficult, hard journeys. What are your suggestions? Because they are at the very beginning of the life, let's say, the real life. After 1 year, they're going to be graduated. So, what are your suggestions when they join the, let's say, job life? I mean, because Cyprus is not a very easy country. It is very small. It is a paradise, but we have lots of obstacles in front of us if we, want to do something in Cyprus. So, what are your suggestions for our students?
Oh, well, suggestions plenty, because I've done this the hard way. So, number one suggestion is, if you have a vision or an idea, don't give up on it just because something comes up, or that it's difficult, because the difficulties will always be there, and you need to persist through it. If your idea is valuable enough for you to express it or to create it, you need to persist through it. For example, if you in my book I explain the difficulty of me actually getting to Afghanistan, because we had to go through Iran and we had to spend some time back with my family. And if I left it up to my family to kind of be okay with me going to Afghanistan, they would not. They weren't okay. My mom was not okay about me going to Afghanistan. She kicked up all kinds of fuss. She did everything in her power to discourage me from going. But because I had a vision, because I had a commitment, despite everything, despite even upsetting her, which is, in our culture is like the last thing you want to do is upset your family, your mom and your dad, I was like, well, I have commitment. I need to go and create this, because that's a vision I've created and I can't give it up, because that's my vision, so that's the number one, is persistence, and it's pushing forward with your vision. Number two is, rejections are not personal. Don't take them personally. They are just, you haven't found your alignment or your match, because if we were to give up at so many different stages of, we didn't have funding, we got rejected by funding bodies, we got rejected by producers, we got rejected, just rejections galore, right? Until somebody came along, until that one person came along and took us on as a producer. Similar with a book. I kept writing it, rewriting it, and then getting rejected, and until one match. All you need is that one person, or that one match, or that one big support to help you develop your idea. Number three would be, finances will fall into place, because a lot of times, for example, when we were going to Afghanistan, we didn't have any money. We had no support, but we're like, because we have the vision and the creation, we just went and did it. So don't limit yourself by finances and thinking, how am I going to do it? If you have the vision and the mission, somehow people will come into your existence who will support you to do it, either financially, through their own support, through their own means, or artistic abilities, or whatever you need. If you have the vision and if you have the mission, things will align and happen to you. Yeah.
Nothing more actually to this. So dedication is very important, consistency is very important, and willingness is very important. And while you are on the way, actually, the feeling of the power inside, and the commitment, and as you said, is very important. As I said, here is in Cyprus, especially in the north side of the Cyprus, there are obstacles, and as much as obstacles, there are some limitations as well. And sometimes people can find themselves in a situation like, okay, we can't do anything in this island. Therefore, there are very good examples actually in Cyprus as well, that they are dedicated and they reach their goal, let's say. So yes, thank you so much for your informative and which is a very good example for us as well. It's
I've got one more thing to say on that topic before we wrap it up. Is you talk about limitations. I come from Iran, right? My background, I'm from Iran. And so in Iran, we have so many limitations when it comes to expression, when it comes to especially filmmaking. If you've ever watched Iranian films, or if you ever want to make a film in Iran, you've got to jump through hoops and loops. So limitation can be your number one friend, because what it can do is it can allow for creativity. For example, in Iran, you can't show particular things on screen because of the politics and the religion and the social rules, right? But people find all sorts of creative ways of actually demonstrating that and expressing that in the most amazing and incredible way, because they find a way around the limitations. So I think the last thing I want to leave you guys with, that limitation is actually your friend. It can be your biggest friend.
Yes, I agree with you. And Nuranaja has another question. She asked, why Afghanistan but not Iran?
Why did we make a film in Afghanistan?
Yes, but not Iran. What is the motivation actually?
Several things. Number one is because Afghanistan is a mystery for me. It was a mystery for us, so we were really interested in exploring that mystery, right? Iran. I come from Iran. I know what's going on there, but there was a pull in that for Afghanistan, and the fact that not much had come out of Afghanistan, so it was very innovative or unique to be telling a story in Afghanistan. Iran was a bit easier, so I think it was also a personal challenge. And the second one is probably, as weird as it sounds, probably it was easier for us to make that film and distribute it, but since we made it in Afghanistan, because in Iran we would have had faced different kinds of challenges, we would have had different kinds of problems, we would have been much more involved in the politics of it, especially because we're from Iran. Whereas in Afghanistan, it was a lot easier for us to go in as a foreigner and just do what we wanted to do, because there's that degree of distance. When you're really involved in a place, it's like going to some place where you don't know what's going on. You can do a lot more because you don't know what's going on. So for example, if you go to India, there's people who go to India and hitchhike, and the Indian people themselves go, oh my God, that's really scary. But as a foreigner, you don't know, you just gotta go and do it. So it's the same thing. That's another reason that we chose Afghanistan, because it was easier in terms of what we could have achieved.
Thank you so much for your answer. Nuranaja has another question. She's with us, but she's not here. I can feel her now. Yes, she's asking whether you know about the people in Cyprus who are from Eastern countries, and there are women in Cyprus. Let me find the. Just a second. The exact how it is. the rights, Arabic rights in Cyprus. There are a group of people. She is asking whether you know about them. Maybe it can be, take your interest.
The women of Cyprus who were taken to Saudi Arabia, is that the one, or people, because I watched the documentary of Fatima a while ago, which was about the Cyprus women who were taken to some Arabic countries. Is that what she's talking about, or is that something else?
Yes, she is asking about it.
Yeah, I've heard of this issue, but I'm not too familiar with it.
Yes, that's what she asked actually. It can take your interests. You can find it interesting to work on it, maybe.
Yes. It's always been an interest. Yeah, I found it fascinating.
Yeah. Its name was Fatima, she said.
Yes, I've seen it. I've met with the girl who made it. Yeah.
Nuran Hocam, any questions? I'm asking her now. And any questions to the class? No? Okay, thank you so much for being with us today. We are very pleasured for hosting you. It was very impressive and motivates me actually a lot. And inspired. It was very inspiring way, let's say, that you taken. And yes, thank you so much again. And I would like to invite you again in the future with your new jobs, works, documentaries, books, and so on. We are about to finish. If the students don't have any question. No? Okay. Thank you so much again. And
awesome.
See you
Thank you so much. Hopefully next time I'll come to Cyprus. Maybe we can organize this in person. I'd love to catch up with you and see the class in person.
I would like to meet with you in person as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, that was not a bad shot, but this is not how it all started. I've always been dreaming of becoming a filmmaker. I believe that a good movie can make our world a better place. But I need to learn more. Life is like a video game. It's fun and it's challenging at the same time. Every accomplished mission leads to another one. Look at these harmonious moves. A perfect combination of mind and body, absolute freedom of self-expression. Art imitates life, and nature is the ultimate masterpiece. To design like a master, you must learn the basics and then go beyond. But how? So our journey began to this magical place, Cyprus. We found our voices. We heard each other's songs. We captured our moment, and we painted our lives. Not to mention the fun. We illuminated our future. We learned from the past. The craft and the knowledge came together to create art. there's a lot to discover and a lot to be done. We were taken by hand, one by one. The journey goes on, and the future is bright. The seeds we planted will give years of beautiful blossoms. So our dreams came to life, and life became like a dream. The magic is real, only if you believe. The journey we began finally came to an end. But it's time for a new start. Now, let's take another shot.